sawdust up in this business, so make sure my microphone's clear.
It's funny. One of my mentors recently, and it was an analogy that I never heard of before, but I mean the concept or framework understood. Have you ever heard of selling sawdust?
Selling sawdust. I don't think
Okay,
so.
so when we were talking about earlier about like for instance, the nutrition ebook, right? As far as like prep food, cook food, like little life hacks for parents cooking at home.
Yeah.
For me, that comes easy because I've done it for 15 years, right? As far as teaching the stuff and prepping food. And so the analogy is that's my sawdust, right? Like that's the easy small things that I can do, but for someone else could bring a lot of value. So what he was mentioning to me is like when you're thinking about value for helping people is think of what comes easy. What's your sawdust? Like what do you already do that's like super easy to do, but for someone who's brand new might be like for you in turning, right? You're like, "Oh, like this seems easy for me." It's not for me, right? So like being able to learn like the basics of that would be like huge. So
Yeah.
that just kind of spur of the moment. That's what that reminded me of. Selling sawdust.
I love it. That makes sense. That's a good one. I haven't heard
There
of
you
that
go.
one either.
I didn't either. So I was like, oh, okay. I must tell my woodworking friends. Right.
Selling sawdust. Mm.
Mhm.
Sawdust is good for a lot of things. You can use it in your garden too.
I
Let's
didn't know that.
talk about that.
I as a kid, I used to be the one in charge for picking up all the sawdust and putting them in bags. So little family story.
Yeah.
My uncles on my mom's side, they own a like not a wood factory, but basically they would take trees, take off all the bark, like get the wood ready. And so there was these huge bandsaws, like gigantic bandsaws. And
Yeah.
right underneath them, there was like a trap door where all the sawdust would fall, and only kids could fit into that trap door. So that was
Oh
my
my
like
gosh.
summer. That was my summer job growing up overseas.
Yes.
Was packing bags full of sawdust.
Oh my goodness. Probably with like no dust protection mask on or anything like that, of course.
Dust protection. How else did I get my 8-year-old stash? It was all sawdust.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's good. That's good.
Stories upon stories. How you doing today, sir?
I am doing great. The thought was, why don't we respect ourselves enough
It's
to
coming to me.
stick
Mhm.
to that early morning routine or that just that preparation. I was
Okay.
the context for all of you
I
guys
was just gonna
listening.
say, share the context.
The that I was getting ready for early morning meeting with a mentor of mine, and I thought, you know what, I want to be ready for this. I don't get up really early all the time, so I'm going to be ready. So I ground the coffee. I set out all of the ingredients, the stuff, because I'm doing pour over. It's not just press the button.
Nice.
And I got my clothes out, folded them, set them right on, like right next to the shower, so I can just wake up, pop in, boom, bomb, boom, done, and then I'm ready to go, prepared mentally for um, this time with my friend.
Mm.
And I thought, man, I got to talk to Rob about that because I thought, am I just a glutton for punishment? Why do I not do this myself for myself every day? And I was just trying to mentally process that because I go, yeah, ooh, I'm gonna be ready for my friend. Ooh, I'm gonna be ready for getting out to this like event, whatever it is. But when it comes to just me waking up in the morning, I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm not gonna set it all out. I wouldn't do that.
Mhm.
Why?
And that's a great context because I think a lot of us struggle with that, right? Especially when we've tried to kind of get back in the horse, so to speak, when it comes to exercise or nutrition, or you could literally fill in the blank with anything that has to do with either a hobby that you're trying to get back into or something that you've always been interested in that you kind of put on the back burner for a while and you're trying to get back into it. But the funny thing is, like you mentioned, I used to wake up early for snowboard trips, right? Like you get so excited, I'd be like wired, or I wouldn't sleep well the night before because I was excited about it, or getting on a coaching call or a mentorship call. Like everything's laid out the night before. And a buddy of mine also does the same thing and mentioned to me, it's like, well, one of the frameworks to think about it is it's just self respect. And it's something that I talk about with a lot of the dads And it's a touchy subject because what are you talking about? I respect myself. It's like, yes, we all respect ourselves. Of course we do. But when it comes to doing the little extra stuff consistently, so an analogy was like, hey, you had a mentorship call, right? So you set up, if your friend were to call you every day at 5 a.m., would you still get up? Would you still prep everything? Would you still do coffee? Knowing you, the answer would probably be yes, right? It's because I have this opportunity to learn, to grow through this interaction. This is a friendship that, we're still cultivating. So, of course, but when I switch your friend with you, right? Like, would you wake up 5 a.m. to meet yourself? A lot of people would be like, no, probably not, right? Either
Yeah. Yeah.
it's boring or so for me, it took me years of kind of digging underneath, the carpet, sweeping all that baggage from years of learning to realize like in the sense of respect for me, the reason I wasn't doing it was because I was used to people pleasing. I was used to being outward facing, helping others, wanting to be part of other people's storylines. That was where I felt most of service or most seen, so to speak. But then when it comes to the time and the space of taking care of myself, and it's something we've talked about, it's like, hey, if you are the captain of your ship, and if you're not taking care of yourself and that ship goes down, the whole ship goes down. There's no, second in command or anything like that. So that's first off, kind of the context of why it's important to look at this relationship with yourself, respecting yourself is if I don't respect myself enough to wake up and take care of my health, then I'm not only is that something I need to work on, but that's something I'm also showing my kids, right? Like, oh,
Mm.
dad, you talk about self care and exercise being really important, but I never see you do it. And so they grow up in the same cycle that we grew up, seeing that being selfless is an act of care, is an act of loving, which it is, but at what cost? Right. So I think there's always that cost. And I think being selfless and of service is important as long as you're creating boundaries around your own self care. And so, yeah, that sense of respect. And it was kind of like that ugly glass mirror that I had to look into is like, hey, why am I not important enough to myself like how I treat others? Like I would wake up at 4 a.m.s for clients back in the gym days to do personal training because hey, they need help. I'm willing to go there, right? I would drive miles to help friends in college move, but I would never ask for it in return. And so it was something about self-worth that I really needed to dig into. It's like, why do I see myself as this martyr? And it's just for me personally, it was something I saw growing up. It's what I saw the male figures in my family do was the self-sacrifice, right? Like that's breadwinner, right? Working your job, same company for years, retire, so on and so forth. But what
Yeah.
I saw is like, hey, you're supposed to put what you want on the back shelf in order to help others. Like that's what you're supposed to do. But then as I was growing in parenting, I was growing in relationship, growing in my entrepreneurial endeavors, I realized, hey, if I don't take care of myself, man, everything's going down. My relationship, my parenting, and my business. And so for me, working with dads about like, man, Rob, I'm really struggling. Now, this framework doesn't work for everyone, may not be the source for everyone, but for me, it was like, why can't I make myself important enough to take care of myself consistently? And so the easy markers we talked about before was okay, I didn't have the skills and resources, but we can fix that, right? We can make the skill really low, we can make the resources really easy. And then it gets to the hard talks of like, why am I not important enough to myself? Like, my wife is important. I'll do whatever for her. My kids are important. I'll do whatever for them. But why isn't Rob not important enough for Rob? Right.
Mm.
So that's something once you start having that conversation and you're able to kind of I use like planting. I'm not a gardener, by the way. My wife is the green thumb, but I use gardening and computer systems because I like computers as analogies. But like once you uncover that seed, you can plant a new one, right? Once you figure out what the OS is, the operating system, you can upgrade your OS. We don't need to stick with those same OSs that we saw growing up, the seed that we saw growing up. So for me, is when I came to that aha moment, it's like, no, I am important enough. And this is why, because my kids and family are relying on me. That's why I'm important enough. Because for my own self-esteem, to be able to stand here confident in what I'm talking about, would have had to walk the walk, so to speak. Right. So when I'm helping dads around sleep and relationships and health, like I can't just teach it from, oh, I read it in this book. Now let me teach you on it. It's like, no, these are the hard conversations. And more often than not with the dads, it's and with the parents, it's we got used to self-sacrificing for others. right? And that's kind of the model we saw. Not good or bad, but hey, there's other ways to do it. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I'm tracking. I'm tracking. I wrote down, there's this I guess maybe there's like a little bit of a stigma with this. I don't know
Hmm.
how other people think about this, what comes to mind, but when you hear the word self-care, I think a lot of us who grew up with that same um what's the word I'm looking for? Methodology, or that same
Hmm.
way that you were talking about,
Just our environment, right?
self-sacrifice.
It's just our
Yeah,
environment that we grew up in.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like that environment produces this feeling of like, okay, we talk about self-care, you think, wow, that's selfish. Like self-care, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
selfish, whatever. Like I'm not gonna do that because I have more important things to do.
Hmm.
And I think, maybe some people out there are thinking of self-care as, if you watch Parks and Recreation ever, like treat
Yes.
yourself. It's a treat
Yes.
yourself time.
Yeah.
You're going out, you're buying all the things, you're like
Hmm.
getting massages and doing all the stuff, which again, not good or bad, like in and of itself. But what we're talking, I think what you're getting at here is the self-care is like just it's a refueling, and however
Yeah.
that person, whoever you are, needs to be prepared for the journey of the, like, that day or
Hmm.
that time. Like the thing that I'm getting at here is, for myself, it's a lack of, I think it's a lack of vision, it's a lack of forward thinking. um I'm very much off on a whim all the time, and I feel like my wife is like really bringing me in, like reeling me in on that. Like that's good, that's good for
Hmm.
me, that's what I need. you know um a dad buddy of mine, we were just talking about the challenges of fatherhood,
Hmm.
and he brought up, like, hey, dude, we can't just like go and drive out to the desert on a whim an hour later like we used to, like
Hmm.
to just go have fun. It takes a lot more forward thinking to take a family out, and there's a lot of things you can't necessarily do nowadays the same as before.
Hmm.
But I feel like that's a key to what we're talking about, just in the morning preparation, and also for just fatherhood in general, is you and I are talking about this a lot, that forward thinking, like looking ahead. What's our vision for our family? What is
Hmm.
our North Star? And like, in order to get there, I need to be fueled up.
Yeah. And I
So
think there's so many things that you mentioned that I want to kind of touch on really quick. So the
yeah.
first one is when you mentioned like, hey, a lot of times dads think of like, hey, I've got better things to do than self-care. For for me, that's a signal that we need to do more self-care. The fact that you are not important enough on your daily to-do list to do anything about it, that's not kind of like a red flag, right? I've got more important things. Yeah. But if your tanks are on empty, even though you might have the greatest truck in the world, if there's no gas in that truck, you're not carrying anyone or anything
Not
anywhere,
going anywhere.
right?
Nope.
And so I think it's that old stigma what self-care means. When I mean self-care is not the Aziz Ansari treat yourself self-care, right? I'm talking about like what do you need to do to have more energy in your day-to-day? For some, that's exercise. For others, that might be nutrition. For others, that might be better sleep, depending on the season of life you're in. For others, it might be to have a hobby. Like some people don't even have a hobby, they literally work in family time. Not right or wrong, but what I've noticed over the years for me personally and for the people that I've helped over the years is we normally have 4 to 5 tanks, 4 to 5 things in our lives that when we top off, we're able to do 99% of everything out, being present, full of grace, right? Joy, and actually wanting to do that. Whereas when certain tanks get low and we don't address them, we start to overcompensate, right? We start to take from the other tanks and it just starts crumbling down. So if you think about your mental and your physical health, your emotional health as the foundation to the home that you're building, if any of that foundation is weak, no matter what you're building, it will crumble. It's just when, right? It's not an if. So when I talk about self-care and respecting yourself, it's, hey, I want to build a strong foundation for an 80-year marriage, right? I want to build a strong foundation so that what I'm raising my kids, how I'm acting and being as a person, they see as the man they're going to be married to, right? Like I've got all girls, so that's the present. If you had boys, like that's the guy that I want my son to grow up to be like. And
Yeah.
so that's what I mean about self care. It's like, are you taking care of your emotional, physical, and mental health? And if not, if one of those tanks are a little bit lower, then that's what we need to be addressing. That's what we need to work into a daily routine. Like you mentioned, vision. If I don't have a vision for what my life is a year from now, it doesn't need to be like the 10-year business plan, 5-year business plan. It's like, hey, where do I want to be in the fall? Right. The funny thing is, the only time I hear anyone talk about vision, it's summer bod. Right? It's like it's January, February. We've got a beach trip coming up. I need like that's the only time we ever talk about vision. But as a parent, your life is done in seasons and chapters, right? You have the newborn 0 to 1. You have that toddler 1 to 4, 1 to 5. You have that big transition between elementary and middle school. So these are the seasons of life, and your tanks will be at different levels or different priorities. So being able to be aware of what season of life am I in. For instance, I know Travis has got a little one at home, and so it's one of those things where it's like, and I remember when I first had my ours when she was a baby, I was like, well, everyone out there is saying I need to exercise and sleep more. That's not going to happen, right? Like I'm already not sleeping with a newborn. How am I going to sleep more with a newborn? Or exercising? I can't go to the gym for 60 minutes. I'm on dad duty 24/7. So it's about, again, resources, skill sets, and creating that routine. But if you don't have a vision, right, you can't work towards anything. And if you don't have a daily schedule, you can't fit any of those gas or pillars in, right? Like, yeah, I want to do more, relationship more. I want to build more relationship with my wife. Well, when are you going to do that? mm Okay, so it never gets done, right? So again, all goes back to why a lot of people struggle with staying consistent on their self-care is because I think it's what we talked about, the old paradigm, the old environment of like, well, I can't talk about myself, taking care of myself. Like, no, I need to be taking care of others. But I think what we saw over the last 5 years is when you don't take care of yourself, when you don't have that awareness of how you're doing, you can't take care of others, right? You can't, right? It's almost like you become the weakest link.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep.
That is some good stuff. I
But yeah.
I'm thinking about where some dads out there might land in this
Hmm.
discussion, um, or if it's a mom listening, like
Hmm.
where their spouse might land, like
Hmm.
with this. I get that early mornings aren't everybody's cup of tea. Some people are night owls. Like maybe that's when you're the most productive.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Um, but when you have every season's different, granted,
Hmm.
but when you have, especially with young kids like myself, got a 4-year old, got a 2-year old, got a 6-week old, um, your schedule doesn't quite look the same
Day to
all the
day.
time.
Day to
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm working on is okay. How do I adapt? But and can only do make those tweaks if you have something out ahead that you're looking
Mhm.
towards, right?
Not only that, you can't make those tweaks unless you're assessing, like we do weekly, right? You kind of, hey, how'd the week go? Well, this was good. This is where I learned. And the fact that you're assessing yourself means you can make those changes. And I think for like your season right now with really young kids, it's not about perfect, not even close to that. And I don't think anyone should work towards perfect, but it's like, how can your pillars, what you're working on, how can I make them so simple and so easy that in a fluid day to day, it's easy enough to for me to pick it up like this glass of water versus going out and setting up a garage gym and getting you know what I mean? Like, how do I make it so simple? And I think a lot of us parents, like we're used to the hard because I think, again, we have this understanding that hard means change. It means something's good is going to come from that. But we don't have that same framework with, well, how do I make it simple? Well, how do I make it easy? Well, we don't want easy. We want hard. Like, no, I've got 3 kids under the age of 5. I don't want hard. I need easy. And what I have found is if you can make it easy, you can keep it consistent. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And so where do you see? dads,
Mhm.
um, landing in this realm of like, I want to do stuff for myself,
Gotcha.
and I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. I like asking you these types of questions because generally speaking, Rob has Rob was I first met Rob as a CrossFit coach, and he's
Mhm.
good at telling you, let's see how we can scale this for yourself.
Exactly.
Maybe you can't do the thrusters or the whatever you call them. You can do a push up on your knees, and
And
that's
do a push up on
great.
your knees.
That's
Exactly.
flipping awesome for you.
That's making it simple, right? Like, what can I do?
Yes.
So for dads on the spectrum, current dads and past dads, and just parents and people in general, I think I think you attract who you are, not what you want. So for me, in the past life of being a people pleaser and almost like a self martyr, I noticed I was working with a lot of people of the similar cut. Right? They're like
Mm.
they were the first person you would call to help with anything, and they would literally stop what they're doing to help you. But these were also the same people that I noticed struggled with weight, struggled with sleep, with stress, with exercising consistently. And so this is where I wanted to put this little flag in the ground. If you're struggling with yourself being good enough or the reason to start consistently doing anything, right? Hobby, exercise, stuff like that, then do it for someone else in the beginning. This is what we call, taking something that's exterior versus interior. Um, Basically, for me, the big pull was when I became a dad, and it was for my kids, right? Because both my parents were obese, not the healthiest people, and so as soon as I had kids, I'm like, okay, this needs to be a pillar. This needs to be a daily thing because I want to shift or change the paradigm of what they see growing up and how they put health or their self care as a priority. So I did that in the beginning, right? Working out because I want to be that fit dad, working out because I want to be able to clean the garage without throwing my back out for my spouse, right? And I started with that until it became intrinsic, right? Until I had reasons inside, like, no, I am worth it. I do feel better when I'm healthier. I can be a better husband and parent when I'm doing X, Y, and Z. So it's taking something extrinsic at first. So if in the beginning you have a really hard time doing it for yourself, then do it for someone else. Literally, no one will say that. Like, oh, you should always do it for yourself. No, because that's what's stopping you right now, right? Because we're trying to do it for ourselves,
It's
right?
not
So
working.
it's not working. So do it for your spouse, do it for your kids, do it for your church, do it for your neighbors, just to be consistent, right? To start that ball rolling like a snowball, right? Going down that hill. And then eventually your body will start to crave whatever you're doing, right? Maybe it's journaling, meditation, prayer work, exercise, cooking a meal every day. Once you start doing it, it's like with the reps. Look at any skill set that you have mastered or are good at, and it just takes reps. So doing it for someone else in the beginning just helps you get the reps in, but then eventually the machine starts going on its own and you'll start to want to do it for yourself. And that's across the board. Even in the entrepreneurial space, like I don't want to do this. As soon as you have kids, oh, I'm going to do this. I will sell X amount, I will build X amount because now it's not for me anymore in the beginning. But
Mm.
that being said, right, we don't want to always be doing it for extrinsic or exterior reasons. It buys you enough time to really work on yourself to be like, no, this is ultimately while I'm doing it is because A, I'm worth it, right? B, because I know that when I'm filled, when my tanks are full, I am a better dad, I am a better partner, right? I'm a better friend. And so whatever it takes in the beginning, like you said, where do dads kind of fall? Most of the dads or most of the parents I've worked with are similar to me. So in the beginning, I was like, hey, I could tell you to do it for all these reasons, but you're not, right? Especially because they're for you.
Yeah.
So guess what? If
Yeah.
you have kids, do it for your kids. If you have a spouse or partner, do it for your spouse or partner. If you don't have any of that, do it for your job. Whatever you're doing, if you're a healthy person, you're going to show up and be more productive, right? So do it for all those reasons, but to work on yourself, right? To figure out like, hey, ultimately this is for you.
I love that. I love that. Now, another thought I had while you were talking
Mhm,
about that, I'm curious is, for myself, I thought, what I want to do is I want to get those reps in.
mhm,
I'm going to start making reasons that I need to get up. For myself, I was like, I want to be up early, but it wasn't enough to
To
just
want to do that.
to
No, that's an
set the
emotional
alarm.
connection.
Yeah.
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 But so I signed up for this men's Bible study early morning, 5:30 a.m. I'm like, okay, I'll do
That'll
that.
get you up.
That's
That'll
gonna
get
get
you
me
up.
up.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm gonna meet up with my mentor. He's one of them. He's across the world, so we have to meet up at 5 or 6 a.m. because it's his like 2 p.m. or something.
Hmm.
So okay, I'll get up then too. So I started filling in the calendar with some things. Now, of
And I,
course, you don't want to overdo it, right?
no, but I love
But
it. The fact that you're doing this, right? This is an external, right? An extrinsic reason to wake up. I guarantee after doing this for a couple weeks, you'll start getting up the other days just as a default, right? Just because you're
mm,
starting to do it, right? And that's what a lot of people ask. Well, like I'm not a morning person. Me neither. Most of my creative work is always done at night, but I know how many hours. I'm realistic. I know how many hours a day I have. I know when my willpower and my focus starts to diminish in the afternoon. So I can't complain or get frustrated when I'm trying to do stuff that takes a lot of this in the afternoon when I don't have any of it. So I came to terms with, hey, I need to wake up early. And do I like it? No. But my emotional feelings towards this does not outweigh all the benefit from an extra 2 to 3 hours a day of my time that comes in. Right. And so as soon as you can separate that emotional connection, like, oh, I don't feel like it. I don't feel like working out either. But the energy it gives me, the relationship it gives me with myself and with my kids, I'll take that over any. I don't want it. And then there's little ticks, like tricks and tactics to get over that emotional hump. But what you're doing right now is awesome. When you sign up for something where you have to be there for someone else, that's a great way to wake up early.
there we go. And you know what came to my mind? This is what I'm going to leave as my last little nugget. I think is this. Unless you have any other thoughts as well, but let me just say this. When you told me, I thought this was the funniest sounding thing ever. But when we were talking about doing things that you don't want to do, but you
Hmm.
want to do them because they're good for you, uh, you gave me um, the suggestion of counting down out
Hmm.
loud to yourself. And I
Yeah.
thought that's what we do with 2 year olds. Like, if you don't come in
Hey,
five
I'm going to start
seconds,
counting down, right?
okay, five. Well, and so sure enough, I only really had to do it like once to really make it work, but because it felt really silly, but it was very effective. It was
It
like, oh, I gotta go work out right now, but I'm sitting right in the couch and it feels no, Travis,
feels
okay,
really good. Hmm.
5, 4, 3, and I start saying it out loud. I'm like, okay, 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 I'm going.
You know. Okay, so let me add a little bit more parameters to that. One,
Hey, there you
I
go.
think as parents, I think we go there, right? I was like, oh, well, I'm telling my kids last 5 seconds at the park before we have to leave. It's not necessarily like that, but if that works for you, awesome. So what I want you to do is next time that you have something in your schedule or something that you want to do, but you're comfortable, right? Any change in the status quo is going to be uncomfortable. Label whatever you want: nutrition, exercise, sleep, communication, or self love, whatever you want to call that. It's hard, right? Because we're comfortable. Even if what you're comfortable in is uncomfortable, it's normal, right? It's your norm.
Yeah,
So, for your example, if I'm ever sitting like at the desk and I'm going to go work out after this, right? It's like, oh, well, I really feel like don't doing it. I start to count down audibly or in my head, but I'm focusing on what's the first action I need to take, not the end results of working out in the garage, not what the workout is. So my first action is literally leaving this office. So that's all I need to do. So when I'm counting down, I'm not thinking about working out. I'm thinking about leaving this room. And then leaving this room will end up in the garage. And then the garage will end up working out. So if it's like getting up and going for a jog or a walk, don't think about going for the jog or walk. Just think about getting up and putting your shoes on. Like that's the first action you need to do. So for future ones, Travis, if
love
you need
that.
to count down, do the countdown, but just think of the first action. Like, oh, I'm on dinner tonight. I really don't feel like cooking dinner. What's the first thing I need to do? I just need to open the fridge. Okay, then do that, right? That's the first action. The rest has a tendency to fall into place.
Yeah, I'm laying in bed and it's 5 a.m. and my alarm went off. I just need to sit up. I just need to
That's it.
sit
Hmm.
or what have you.
Yeah. So
Thank you for
just make it
that
simple.
clarification. I appreciate that. That's
You're
that was
welcome.
good.
I
Yeah.
love that though. I love that. If you think about it like a toddler, do it, man. Rob, you got 5 seconds. Four, Don't let me get
What's
to
my
one.
what's my consequence?
You gotta do twice as many push-ups. That's the consequence, right?
If you start thinking that way, then you got to reframe your vision, your goals.
Yes, yes. But a lot of times that's just because, again, environment. I'm a big believer in environment can either support your current habit and goals or it can't. And then not only that, how we grew up, our environment, it's what installed the OS. It's not the OS that we need right now, but it's what installed it. Right.
Yep, yep. I saw a statistic this last week, and see, should have written it down like I've been working on trying to do more, but I didn't write it down. I took
Love
a
it.
picture of it, but I'm using my phone for this sweet podcast. So it was something along the lines of like studies show that even just by changing your environment, by
Oh yeah.
leaving the room or whatever, you know, going stepping outside like that changes the brain and it
Hmm.
allows you to re-engage or change direction if you need to do so.
Hmm.
So um
No, no,
yeah.
100%. The things that I've coached people on has to do with environment. So, for instance, like, let's say you came up to me, it's like, "Hey, Rob, I'm really working on this passion project, this side hustle, and I need to do some computer work, right? But you know what? I for some reason I get distracted easily at home with three kids and stuff like that, and it's because the home environment is what you subconsciously create as your down regulation, relaxation environment. Of course, you can't do work in that environment. It's one of the reasons why people go to coffee shops to do work because it's exterior to their kind of safe environment, relaxed environment. Same thing for like why most people don't are not successful. Well, first off, they don't have systems and accountability, but with home gyms, it's because it's still home, right? So it's
Yeah.
easy for me to feel comfortable, safe. So I need
Mm.
a separate environment for
Yeah.
me to do that. So for me, the life hack at home is to have separate rooms. So the garage is for exercise and exercise only. The bedroom's for sleep and sleep only. The office is for work and work only. So now my subconscious knows as soon as I get to work, I play the same music list while I'm at
Mhm.
work. My brain knows it's work time. Same thing
Yeah.
with exercise and other spots. So definitely environment plays a big role.
That's some good stuff. Oh man, I feel like we could just end it right there. There's so
I think
much
that's
that
good.
somebody should
Yeah.
be, just soaking up on those good nuggets.
So
Um,
what's our outro then? I'll let you say the outro so we get some good audio.
oh yeah, so guys, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for being here wherever you are in your car, standing amongst a bunch of small children, or working when you or not working, I should say. Just remember, we aren't professionals. We're
Mm-mm.
just two dads in
In
real
real life. That's we're just two dads in real life.
life. There's so much pressure on that outro, man.
There
I'm
is.
gonna iron it. I'm
We'll
gonna
we'll
iron it
work
a
on it.
lot,
We'll
straighten it out.